Hi, welcome to Dangerous Business Conversations with Susan. Today I have as my guest Tom Libby. Tom is the CEO of Diversified Sales Solution and also the co-founder of Smarketing Connect. Getting sales strategy right is part vocation, part mission for Tom. Over the past 18 years, Tom has developed his management, leadership, and sales skills in diverse industries and includes experience in startups and small companies. Tom uses his sales and management experience to deliver interim management training and coaching to small companies. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, thanks for having me. Well, I
Hey,
appreciate
thanks for being my business partner for the last 8 years.
it. I know. I can't even believe it's been that long already, but yeah, it goes very
It
fast.
goes by. So, tell us, what types of companies have you and I helped over the years?
Well, it's funny when I saw we were talking about this question the other day, just between the two of us, and I was like, I didn't realize how many different companies there were in the varieties of them. So, meaning, everything from software companies to service-based companies, technology companies to installation companies. We've had healthcare companies. I really honestly was surprised when I actually sat down and looked at the variety of businesses that we've been able to help over the past 8 years, and how wide and varied they were. But the reality of it is, and I tell people pretty consistently that sales is pretty agnostic. You can, if you really know and understand sales, and you really know and understand sales processes, there's probably not a company out there that you can't help if you really put your mind to it. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, very good. Yeah, we've helped, I don't know, I would even say more than that if we could go back into our memory banks and actually remember things. There's other companies, how much advice have we given at different networking events and things like that? It's crazy.
Oh, so I was even to your point, I was only thinking of clients that we brought on board, not even thinking about the free advice that we've given away thousands of times to pretty much anybody who asks. So yeah, that's a good point. Very good point.
Yeah. So, what different sales processes or strategies have you helped create for small businesses? Kind of give some examples for us.
Sure. So it's kind of interesting and again, when I was thinking about this question, I'm thinking to myself, like there's no cookie cutter approach, right? Like I've come to experience that even two companies in the same industry are going to potentially have different sales processes because it's not built into their DNA, or it's not built into their style, or their whether it's their own internal management style, or they deal with their operations different than company A handles their operations, so their sales process has to kind of fit with those with everything that's involved in their company. So it's not very simple. It's not quite as simple as if you're an IT company like an ITMSP, three ITMSP companies, you can walk in the door and just give them all three the same sales process. It really is a blend of let's understand what you do well, how what your current sales structure looks like. And some of them have salespeople and some of them don't. Some of them, the ownership is still doing their sales, and some of them have small sales teams. So again, the idea here is that that there's no even two businesses in the same industry that are doing identical functions don't necessarily have the same sales process. So and again, to give you a slight example here, we've had software companies where they're selling software as a service, so a SaaS company, and their their whole idea was let's get them their whole sales process was let's get them out some sort of inbound methodology, and once they get to a salesperson, they're already three-quarters of the way there from the purchase cycle. So their salespeople are very driven by a Q&A style sales approach. You've seen us online, you filled out this form, you're already interested, so what are you interested in, how can I fix that, or how can I address that for you? Which is very it's very very targeted on the questioning. And then another exactly the same type of company wasn't really using a lot of inbound. They were doing way more outbound, so it was much more of, I now have to find somebody that's looking to that I need to introduce myself to, because I don't know if they're interested or not, I don't know if they're in the market or not. So there's more of like a segmented prospecting process on top of the sales process. that you have to implement before you can even get to the sales process. So things like that happen all the time, and things like that happen in just about every industry that we've helped people in. Does that help, or does that answer your question?
Always helpful. You know that. Um, so I'm thinking, tell me some of the tools and things we've implemented, strategy implementation. I know we've done like obviously like CRM,
Yeah.
um, things like that. Different tools, different ways of making what they do better because they didn't have anything to begin with.
Well, I mean, you just named the number one, right? Like the number one version of it was CRM. We have had several companies that never had even turned a CRM on. They didn't know what it was supposed to do. And my favorite, and I won't name names, but my favorite was we had clients working on an Excel spreadsheet, and they were filling in dates on the Excel spreadsheet with notes. And I'm going, I don't understand. Why would you not put this in the CRM? And they, in their minds, thought that the Excel system was just easier, until they really understood what the power was behind the CRM and some of the, in especially today's CRMs, which have automation built into them. You have email sequences that you can build in. You can build templates. There's all kinds of things that you can, and then you can structure your sales process to fit into that. Meaning, if your sales process is step one, we're going to do this, and step two, we're going to do that, but in between, I want to send this email. You can actually write that out, and the templates are built already, so it doesn't take a lot of time. With Excel, you can't do that. You can't really, I mean, there's always a version, right? So I mean, I guess you could have your Excel file and a Word document open at the same time with your email and say, all right, these companies are at this stage, so I'm going to cut and paste this email into the, but that's just a nightmare. You're just asking for something to go wrong at that point, in my
Yep.
opinion. So it's just much easier. CRM is probably the easiest way. The other things that we've implemented is phone scripting, where the script can be a little flexible, right? So something that I write, that I say, comes out of my mouth very naturally, may not do the same for somebody like you. And we are a good example of that to our clients. Susan and I are very different. So something that I write, she doesn't feel comfortable saying. So you need to show them that their scripts are not hardcore, that they can use their scripts to their advantage and their own personalities. So even scripting needs to be a little fluid and be able
Yep.
to move with the person that you're utilizing the script for. So
Yep.
between CRMs and scripts, email campaigns where we've told people to stop using email as a marketing tool and actually use it as a sales tool, because they're very different in that perspective. And email is great for marketing, don't get me wrong, but from a sales perspective, it's just treated differently, and the wording is different. How you approach the email is different than you would in a marketing environment. So those are probably the top three that come to mind when you're asking about what we've brought to the table for clients.
Yeah, actually, to elaborate on that, um, tools is, didn't we have a client that was using two separate, where you have tickets and they do
Yeah,
servicing?
yeah,
So integrating that whole sales process to a ticket so that when someone can see a complete story, a lot of small companies don't even do that. And there's definitely less expensive ways
yeah,
to implement that.
for
So
sure.
that's a good one. I call it skeleton scripting, Tom. Um,
Yes, I like the term. I've never.
it's a skeleton.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that. So, talk to me about startups as a small business. Have you seen a difference? I know you help. I don't as much. Startups. You've been talking to a lot of startups that haven't even started selling yet. And what are the things that you're doing with them to kind of pre-sell or pre-get ready to start selling? Types of advice that you're giving them.
Well, advice number one, realistically, is you really need to, and I take this to heart with a lot of things that I do, not just necessarily sales in general, but you have to think of what the end result looks like before you even start it. So, and some of these startups will go into the sales process as I'm just gonna address it as it happens, right? Like I'm gonna just reach out to my own network. I'm going to introduce what I'm doing. And if they're interested in buying, I'll sell it to them. And that's literally their mentality when they open the doors of their brand new company. And some of the things that I try to get them to start thinking about is that's not scalable. It's not duplicatable. If you hired 3 salespeople right now and that's your advice to them, reach out to your network and just wing it, you're basically setting yourself up for failure. So starting to understand, you know, there should be some sort of at least foundation that says, I'm selling this. I'm not the first person in the world to sell this, regardless of what it is, even if you dumb it down to simplify as a, you know, it's a specialized software, but it's still software. So there have been thousands of companies, millions of companies that have sold software. So you at least have a foundation to start with, and then you can tweak it as you go for your software. So certain things like whether your outreach is going to be through email or through LinkedIn or through phone calls, getting that stuff kind of situated beforehand is very important. I've never subscribed to the winging it philosophy. So, you know, being able to say that we are a similar company to X, they've done it this way and they've been very successful. So let's see and see if we can duplicate some of that within our own, you know, boundaries and capabilities. So I'll give you a really a direct example. And I had we had a company that was, I think they were 2 years old at this point, and we got involved with them about a year ago through TechStars. I was their mentor in TechStars, and I just stayed on board with them after the fact because I didn't feel like it was I couldn't just dump them. I didn't feel comfortable doing that, so I helped them anyway. The point was, not only did they not have a sales process, they had no salespeople, and even their ownership didn't want to sell anything. So they brought in a person that had no sales experience whatsoever and told them they were going to run sales. So I
Right.
talked to her quite frequently, and you know, and really the encounter was very really like, all right, so you tell me what you're doing and I can help you tweak what you're doing, because she didn't know what she didn't know. And it was really hard for me to start from scratch with somebody who had no sales experience whatsoever, but was expected to walk in the door and start selling. So I flat out told her, I said, I need you to go make some calls and tell me what happens. So she went out and she made, you know, 20, 30, 40 phone calls, and then came back to me and said, here's what happened. What would you do differently? And I coached her through some of the objections and how to handle the no's and how to handle the what happens if they don't ever pick up the phone. And you know, then you know, you move your methodology from the phone to email. If they never respond to an email, move the methodology from the email to LinkedIn, and so on and so forth. So we walked through probably 100 different verses of what this could be. And now a year later, I think she's extremely confident. She knows exactly how to handle these objections. She knows exactly how and she's written out her own sales process now. So if she hires new salespeople, she knows exactly what to do to train them. So it's been a wild experiment for me in taking somebody, brand new company, startup environment, brand new salesperson, no experience. And it's been awesome. It's been really a lot of fun, and it's been fun for both of us. So she learns a lot and I get to teach a lot, which is really where I love to be. So it's been awesome.
That I do know. Um, yeah, it's interesting. When we used to go to a lot of the startup networking events, they when they ask for advice, I go, start with your sales in mind. Like, you start thinking about how you're going to sell this before you start your business, because if you can't sell this, there is no business.
Right. Absolutely right.
Yeah, it's you gotta if you can't sell it, you won't be able to have it.
Yeah,
Um,
and long are the days of if you build it, they will come, right? Like those days are gone. Though that was during the .com boom where we had, and no matter what you built, people were buying it because you were building new stuff. That just doesn't happen anymore. So to your point, how are you going to sell it? You should be thinking of that before you even put time and effort into building the foundation of the company. You should know, at least have some sort of idea of what the sale looks like and who's going to buy it. Again, we didn't even start. We didn't even go into that road about, you know, who you're selling this to and understanding those buying personas, because that's probably one of the step number one you should be thinking about before you even do anything.
Absolutely. So, what are some of the mistakes that you have seen? I mean, obviously, we've seen a lot over the years that companies make that maybe our audience can learn from.
Well, I would say number one, and really on the top of my list, is people just giving up too early. Um, we don't take into consideration today, like we talk a lot today's world about how distracted we are, right? How we're a immediate satisfaction kind of industry or world. But what we don't really talk about is how often you end up seeing that logo before you get the urge to get that. Like meaning like, you know, you know, and people that do a really good job with it are huge brand names like Coca-Cola, Nike, Adidas, Reebok. Those sneaker companies are phenomenal at it. Car companies are phenomenal at it. But it's like we think that we are reactionary, that I need a car, I'm going to go buy a car. we don't really think about the fact that we've seen auto ads for the last 6 months, and now all of a sudden I want to buy a car, and I know what kind of car I want because I just saw it. Anyway, the point is, I think people give up too early. I think number one is you reach out to somebody or you call somebody 3 times and they never respond to your call, so you just move on to the next person. That's not going to work. You need to know
Right.
and understand that it's going to take probably anywhere between 12 and 15 times for them to hear your name, see your name, and understand, to just even understand what you do. Never mind want to talk to you. So I think that would be my number one thing, is having salespeople not give up too early.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask you that if you actually came up with it before I did it, which is interesting that we do that. Yeah, the sales process isn't 2 or 3 times because
No.
people have to be. It's what are you saying? 12 to 15 now. It was probably 7 or 8 when we first started.
Yeah, when we first started, it was
Touches.
7 or 8. Now, I mean, you can go. There's some psychology behind it if you really dive deep into it. There's one book that I read that said that it takes approximately 9 instances for somebody to recognize something. It takes them to recognize something 3 times before they'll pull the trigger on it. So if you do the math, that's 27. So you have to put your logo in front of them 27 times before they pull the trigger on buying something from that logo, from that brand. I'm not sure I buy into all that 27, but 9 to 12 seems very reasonable, realistic, and expected.
Well, as for sales touches, meaning
Yes.
your phone call, your email, your LinkedIn connection, your connect on any other media that they're on, meet them at an event. Like there's,
Yep.
multiple channels, and their process can be very, very complex or could be very simple,
Yeah, and
depending
where
upon.
and where and where my mind goes with that exact statement is, as you're doing all this outreach to them, they're checking you out on your website. That actually counts as one of those 27, right? So when they go to your website, when they see your newsletter, you may not be doing it personally, you may not be making the actual outreach yourself, but they're seeing your logo way more, or they need to see your logo way more than you think they do.
Yeah, very, very true. So anything last closing comments? I don't have any more questions for you. We did the mistakes, and we got the touches in, which I didn't ask, which I thought was great.
No, I think that the thing for me, I think, I think our tagline on our website says that sales is an art and a science. I really do firmly believe that. If I could leave anybody with the last thought in my brain we always say that people buy with emotion and then justify with statistics. We've heard that several times throughout salespeople. So the same rule applies when you're doing sales and sales process, right? It's like, there is an art to it where you need to learn how to, build relationships with people, answer questions the right way. There's an art form to that, but there's a science behind it too. Statistics will tell you stuff, and statistics will tell you where you need help, where you need to learn. If you look at breakdowns of how many calls do I make, how many times do I hear no, how many proposals do I do, all those stupid statistics that we keep track of, and when those percentages are off, then you know where your training needs to happen. So it's an art and a science. It's not one or the other. That's really the last
Correct.
thing I'd like to say.
Yeah, I agree. And what's interesting is that people tell me that they're not a salesperson. Well, they have a business and they're giving people, they have clients.
Yeah.
So they have had to convince that person to use their service or buy their product. So I definitely feel that that's a myth. Everybody is a salesperson. And when you think of a salesperson, sometimes you get like of a bad sort of vibe with that. But it's about finding somebody and helping them. And so that's what I believe about sales.
Could not agree with you more. I
Yeah,
think that negative connotation to sales is kind of craziness, because without sales, the world doesn't operate, right?
that's
It's
right.
as simple as that. Sales makes the world go round. It's very simple as that. So, we tell salespeople all the time, consistently, that your job is not to sell anybody. Your job is to help them buy. So you're not trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. If you find somebody that is the right fit, the right person, the right budget, blah blah blah, your job is to help them implement that decision making process. It's not to sell them into anything. So
Exactly. I agree. Well, hey, thanks for having me on, or thanks for
no.
being on my show.
Yeah.
It's your show. It's my show, not yours. It's
This is
usually
your
your
show.
show.
Yeah,
That's
that's
right.
right.
That's a
Thank
good
you
one.
for having me on.
That's right. You're welcome. All right. Thanks everybody for joining us. And the replay will be out in a while and we'll put it back out for everyone else to see. See you. I'll be doing this weekly every Tuesday. Dangerous Business Conversations with Susan. Have a lot more guests and a lot more information we can help everybody with. Have a great day.